Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Gymblog Central's live Facebook presentation on scoring a front handspring vault. This is an encore presentation from the one that we did on Tuesday night. The one on Tuesday night we did had an amazing turnout. Those that attended asked some amazing questions. The only problem we had was we had some technical difficulties, so they did not get to see the graphics and the animation in the presentation the way it was set up. So I kind of felt bad about that, but then I also had some emails from people saying that they weren't able to make it on Tuesday and they really wanted to see the live version and so a bunch of other things. So I said, you know what, let's do this again. We figured out what the technical issues were and we decided to re-present, and that's what we're going to do tonight. So before we start, let's just go through a few things, and let's just hide this. As we go through the course of the presentation, if you have any questions, please feel free to write them in the comments section. And I do have another laptop set up next to me so I can see any questions that pop up in the comments section. But please keep in mind that I'll do my best to try to answer those questions as we go along. Otherwise, I might wait just till the very end and then answer all the questions from there. And try to keep the questions relevant to the topic of the presentation tonight, which is, again, scoring a front handspring vault. And I'm not going to answer any questions that are related to coaching technique, coaching philosophy, or any questions that are related to your athlete, coach, or individual training situation. Those things I'm going to avoid. And I suggest that if you have any issues or questions with that type of thing, is to go directly to coaches and ask them about that. And let's remember with the comments that this is an educational forum, so let's keep all comments and questions professional in nature. Let me give you a little bit of quick overview and introduction of who I am. I am a professional member of USA Gymnastics and NAWGJ. And anyone who's not familiar with NAWGJ, that's the National Association of Women's Gymnastics Judges. I was a USA Gymnastics Florida State Board member from 2010 to 2016, and I am currently a NAWGJ Florida State Board member, and I started that back in 2010. I'm also a USA Gymnastics Women's Level 10 judge, and I'm the founder and editor-in-chief of Gymblog Central. Little quick information about Gymblog Central. That I started Gymblog Central back in 2015, and I wanted it to be a place to share information and news about anything and everything gymnastics, coaches and athletes, interviews with them, meet results, articles and publications about different events, sports psychology, and then some op-ed pieces about my personal thoughts and opinions on anything related to gymnastics. This year, we started a membership if you wanted to join Gymblog Central, and that membership is only $10 a year. And what that would do, in addition to the general articles that get published weekly or every few weeks, members would get exclusive rights to other articles, interviews, and promotions that the general public did not get access to. Plus, as a member, you do get access to our members-only Facebook page, where we also do additional live Facebook presentations and interviews. We've done one with Wendy Bruce on sports psychology, and we have a couple others coming up, which I'll talk about in a second. But also on our blog, we do have a shop. We sell gymnastics-themed t-shirts, and many of them are hashtag stick it, hashtag get a grip, hashtag no falls, and then we have some gym mom and gym dad t-shirts on there as well. And then we also offer routine evaluations. So if you are a coach or a parent, and you just don't quite understand where some of your athletes or deductions are coming from, what you can do is send a link to YouTube or Dropbox of video of that routine, and it has to be a practice routine. It cannot be a routine from a competition. I'll go through, or my team that works with me will go through that routine and break down all the deductions and where they're coming from. We'll look at composition, start values, and all that, and give you a complete breakdown and written report on the routine evaluation. If you go on to our shop to buy apparel and you use the coupon code Handspring19, you will get 25% off all apparel plus free shipping and handling, and that is good through Saturday. So go ahead and jump on there, order some t-shirts, and You'll get 25% off and some free shipping on that. And that coupon code, again, is good through Saturday. Make sure to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And if you ever need to contact us with any questions, concerns, article ideas, suggestions on presentations, or other things that you're interested in learning more about, or interviews, send us an email at gymblogcentral@hotmail.com. So as I said, we do have some upcoming events. The first one is on March 27th at 8 p.m. And I'm going to do a Q&A with Cheryl Hamilton. Cheryl is she's a Fig Brevet judge, and she's probably most notable for, and if you read the interview article that I did on her, she is the judge that when Michaela Maroney landed her vault at the Olympics and they took the picture, and she's the judge with her mouth that was dropped open, that's Cheryl Hamilton. So she is a FIG Brevet judge. She's also the USA Gymnastics National Technical Committee Chair. So she's the head of the group that creates all the rules, policies, deductions, and all that other fun stuff for the JO Women's Program. So if you have any questions for her or I that are related to deductions, rules, compulsory optional requirements, the new level 6-7 vault, scoring, anything JO except no Excel questions. We're not going to do any Excel questions at this event. It's only JO levels 1 through 10. Any sort of question you have related to the program, either as a coach, as a judge, as a fan, as an athlete, go ahead and send that to us. And you need to submit those questions by next Wednesday, March 6th. And go ahead and send that to gymblogcentral@hotmail.com. She's going to be overseas for the next few weeks because of all the World Cup events she's going to be judging. So she wants a couple of weeks to get all those questions and review them before we do our Q&A. Now, these next two events are tentative. I'm currently working on them. The first one for April is going to be an Excel Q&A interview, and we're trying to do that with the individual who's in charge of the Excel program up at USA Gymnastics, or a regional representative, and it's going to be a Q&A. You submit your questions about anything and everything Excel, and we will go ahead and try to answer those questions for you. And that one is going to be for Gym Blog Central members only. It's going to be on our members only Facebook page. So if that's something that you would like to participate in, go ahead and join Gym Blog Central and you'll have full access to that interview. In May, we are trying to schedule a recruitment tips, tricks, and secrets interview, and that's going to be with a college coach. We actually had one scheduled for February, and the college we had scheduled backed out on us at the last second. So now I'm scrambling to try to find someone else to do that for us. So keep in mind the April and May one are tentative. As soon as they are confirmed, those dates will go on our events page on our blog, also on our events page on our Gym Blog Central Facebook page, and all over social media. So now let's get to the nuts and bolts of tonight's presentation. What are we going to be talking about when it comes to scoring a front handspring vault? First, we're going to look at the different levels where the front handspring vault is introduced and actually performed. We're going to go over the 3 different phases of the front handspring vault. We're going to go over some general deductions that are applied to all different phases. And if you're a coach or a judge, you're going to be very familiar with a lot of these deductions. We're going to go over some specific deductions that are relevant to each one of the specific phases of the vault. We're going to go over some other deductions that definitely affect the athlete score and help with placement. And then we're going to look at 3 different examples of vaults. We're going to look at some weak vaults, we're going to look at an average vault, and we're going to look at a really strong vault. I unfortunately was not able to get to a gym to tape some of these, so we're going to use some YouTube videos, and I'll give you a little bit more information about that as we get to each of those videos. And then we're going to talk about start values and why the start values are different depending on the level that you're competing the front handspring vault in. And then we will do some Q&A. So the front handspring vault, we actually start to see parts of that at levels 1, 2, and 3. It's broken into pieces. It's at its basic, most fundamental parts. But the reason why we see individual parts at levels 1, 2, and 3 is so that we can start enforcing and supporting proper technique and skill development. So at levels 1, 2, and 3, we do evaluate the athlete's run. We want to see fast, faster, fastest. We want to see forward momentum. We want to see nice tight body positions in the air, on the mat and on the landing. And then we also want to start seeing skill development of how to use the springboard. There is a deduction at levels 1, 2, and 3 for chest leaning forward, because we want to see when an athlete takes off for a front handspring vault, we want to see their chest more upright. Then at level 4, we actually see that vault. We actually see them performing the front handspring vault on the table. And this actually graphic is incorrect because it should say levels 8, 9, and 10. Because at levels 6 and 7, they're only performing the round off entry timer, the Yurchenko entry timer, the Suk timer, or the front handspring timer. So they're introduced to it at level 4. They competed at level 5. We don't see the front handspring at 6 or 7, but we do see it reemerge at level 8, 9, and 10. And the expectation is that because you've had all the beginning lead-up skills and drills for levels 1, 2, and 3 in an introductory year at level 4, that level 5, you're getting pretty competent at the skill, and then 8, 9, and 10, it's near perfection if you're going to be performing that vault in competition. So let's start now looking at the different phases of the front handspring vault. And the first phase that we see is the pre-flight. And the pre-flight is the time from when the athlete leaves the board while they're in the air prior to contact to the vault table. That is the pre-flight. The support phase is the time when the athlete makes contact with the table and before they actually block or show repulsion. So when they're in contact with the table, that is the support phase, which is the second phase of the vault. And we're going to go through this in more detail in a minute. And then this last part of the vault is the post-flight, which does include the landing. And that is the time after repulsion to the time of landing. So we have our pre-flight, our support phase, and our post-flight phase. So let's go over some deductions first before we start looking at our phase-specific deductions. Obviously, when we are looking at the front handspring vault for each of the different phases, we're looking at for body positioning. And we can take up to 3/10 for an arched body. And here's a poor graphic of what a front of an arched body position looks like. We also have a piked body position, which is a hip angle, and we can take up to 5/10 for that. So depending on the severity of the degree of the hip angle, we can take anywhere from 0.05 to 0.5. And again, we're going to talk about this, but this can be applied to each of the 3 phases of the vault. Then in like gymnastics, on most events, we have bent legs up to 3/10, leg separation up to 2/10, and bent arm up to 5/10. And these really help to differentiate each athlete from each other and helps with placement. So these are some fine points that I think as a coach, you should really start to work on. And again, these are not every single deduction that we can apply as a judge, but these are just deductions that I felt are really important that you can really focus on to help improve your athlete's scoring. And then obviously we have flexed feet, which is up to 1/10. So let's review specific deductions for each of the 3 phases. Again, we have our pre-flight, which is from when the time the athlete leaves the springboard prior to contact on the vault table. And as a reminder, in level 4, 5, and 8, 9, 10, we do not evaluate the run on a front handspring. The run is only evaluated at levels 1, 2, and 3. And for the pre-flight, we are just looking for general body position deductions. We're looking for that arched body, piked body. We're looking for leg separation. We're looking for we're looking for knee bends, flexed feet. We're looking at head alignment, that making sure that their head is in between their arms. So kind of general basic deductions on that pre-flight. But for the support phase, this is where a large majority of our deductions come from, including the post-flight. So the first major deduction that we have in the support phase is too long in support, and that's up to 5/10. And what is too long in support? Well, we look at it as not time, are we counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in our deductions based on that time frame? Actually, what we are looking at is angles. And so we're looking at, if you see here, obviously the expectation is that we want an athlete to come off the table at vertical. And then we bring our deductions from there, and we look at from vertical to 45 degrees and then 45 degrees to horizontal. So when we're looking at too long in support, this is how we break down our deduction. So if an athlete is in an arched body position in support phase, we look at where their lowest body part is when they come off the table. So if they are in an arched body and when their hands come off the table, their feet are anywhere between vertical and 45 degrees, we can take up to 0.25. If they're in an arch position and their feet are below 45 degrees when their hands come off the table, then we can take 3 to 5/10 off. So we look at where is their lowest body part. So if they're in a pike position and their bottom is at 45 degrees, we can take 0.25 deduction for too long in support when they finally show no support on the vault table. The next deduction we can take is angle of repulsion, and this is huge. This is up to 1 point. And the way that breaks down again is we look at 45 degrees. As I said, with the too long in support, with angle of repulsion, ideal is the athlete is leaving at vertical. If the athlete leaves the table anywhere between vertical and 45 degrees, we can take up to 5/10. If they block off the table and their lowest body part is at 45 or below, we could take 0.55 to 1 point. So again, we're looking at where is their lowest body part, their feet in an arch, their bottom in a pike. For too long in support, where is that body position or body part when they actually leave the table? And it's the same thing with the angle of repulsion. And obviously, both too long in support and angle of repulsion are married together and they come hand in hand, because the longer you remain in support, then the greater your angle of repulsion. And the best example I can use for this is those weaker athletes that when they go to do their front handspring, they're on the table and they basically stop and they arch off. And then by the time their feet are below the vault table, their hands are now just finally coming off the table. That type of athlete is probably going to get 4 to 5/10 on just for too long in support and close to 1 point for angle of repulsion. Bent arms in support. We want to see fully extended arms through the shoulders with head in alignment. Any elbow bend can receive up to 0.05 to 5/10 in deductions. We're also looking at the general body position because, again, as I said, if they are in a pike or arch position, we can take deductions for that. And if their arms are completely bent and their head is touching the table, kind of jumping back to bent arms for a second, they have bent arms to the point where their head is actually touching the table, that's a full 2 points off. Do we see that a lot? No, we don't. We really don't. Because if an athlete is that weak, they shouldn't be at that level anyway, but there is that deduction that is built in. So now let's look at our post-flight. And that is the time, again, from when the time that they leave the vault table to when their feet hit the mat. The first deduction that we can take is height, and that is up to 5/10. And the way we evaluate the height of the vault is we look to see at how much hip rise the athlete has when they block off the table. And that hip rise is then evaluated on taking 0 to 5/10 deduction in height. Now, we do take in consideration the height of the athlete. So if you look at this picture, you notice that the athlete on the left is taller than the athlete on the right. And if you look where her hips are compared to the shorter athlete, her hips are about chest height on the shorter athlete. And if you look at the athlete on the right, who's the shorter athlete, her hips are probably mid-thigh, the taller athlete. So if we're using hip height to evaluate hips and rise of hips to evaluate the height of the vault, we obviously can't use the same standard for both athletes. We want to see the taller athlete have greater hip height, obviously because she's taller and she has a higher center of gravity, which is her hips, than the shorter athlete. And what a lot of judges will do is pick a focal point behind the table as they're looking across sideways at the table, and pick a focal point, and then they look for the hip rise based on that focal point, and base their deduction on that. The next deduction that we can take is distance. And there is a misconception or a myth, rumor, that when judges evaluate distance, they evaluate distance from the edge of the back of the vault table to where the athlete lands. And that is completely incorrect. That is not how a judge evaluates the distance on a vault. So we're going to go through a little example here, and then we're going to do a little bit of a quiz. So we have athlete A and we have athlete B. They both make contact on the vault table in the same spot. Athlete A lands here. Athlete B lands here. Looking at this, who do you think would receive the greater deduction in distance? Would it be athlete A or athlete B? The athlete that would receive the greatest deduction would be athlete A, because they landed closest to where their hands touched the vault table, and athlete B landed further away from that point. Now let's try this one. We have athlete C makes contact with the vault table here, and she lands all the way out here. We have athlete D make contact with the vault table here, and she lands in the same spot as athlete C. So who would have the greatest deduction for distance? It would be athlete D, because looking from where athlete C made contact with the table to where she landed is a greater distance than where D made contact with the table and landed. Okay, so it's not the edge of the vault table, it's the back end of the vault table to where they land. It's actually where do they make contact on the vault table to where they land, and that is how we evaluate distance for the vault. Let me jump back here. Sorry about that. One second. Sorry about that, guys. Okay, here we go. Sorry about that. So the next one is general body position. And again, we are looking at piped body, arched body, bent knees, flexed feet, leg separation. We're looking for all those general body deductions that we could apply through each of the three different phases of the vault. And if you think about it, the athlete that was basically stopped in handstand on the table, who kind of fell over like a tree, so she had too long in support, she had very bad angle of repulsion. She's also going to have, obviously, a great height deduction because she had no block off the table or repulsion. And because she's kind of just falling off and she didn't have that forward momentum from the block, she's also going to have a large deduction in distance as well. Let's look at our landings. A deep squat on a landing is up to 3/10. Now, obviously, we want to see some sort of slight plie in the athlete's knees when they land so they're not blowing out their knees. So there wouldn't be any deduction for a slight plie on the landing. It's anything greater than that is when we start applying a deduction for up to 3/10 for a squat position upon landing. Steps or small hop is 1/10, and we can take up to a maximum of 4/10 on that. A large step or hop is 2/10, and that's a flat 2/10. It's not an up 2. You took a large step or hop, 2/10. Additional trunk movements is up to 2/10. And that's when the athlete lands and they're kind of moving their upper body to maintain balance and gain control of their landing. So we can take up to 2/10 if we're seeing any of that upper body movement in order to maintain control upon their landing. And then additional arm swings. So they land, they show their demi-plie, and then they start falling over the side and kind of doing some windmilling action of their arms. For each of those arm circles, we can take up to 1/10. Deviation from straight line, up to 3/10. What is that? Well, the best example, and I'm going to show you a picture of this, but if you watch US championships, you watch world championships, you watch Olympics, or you even watch like some of the events that are going on this weekend. We got the American Cup going on this weekend. We got Jeslo Cup this weekend. If you watch vault specifically, and you look at the vault landing mat, they have tape lines on the vault landing mat, all right? And basically what it looks like is this. The small square on the left is the springboard. The brown square is the vault table. And then we have our big blue landing mat. The black line is center. So when an athlete performs a front handspring vault, ideally what the judge would like to see is the athlete lands somewhere on that black line. Now in the JO program, we don't put line tapes down the way they do with the elite program. But ideally we want to see an athlete land on that black line. Any deviation off of that line from left to right is then a deduction. And depending on the severity of that deviation, we can take up to 3/10 for deviation from a straight line on the vault. So if you have an athlete who bends one arm a little bit while in support and blocks off, and she kind of gravitates to the left on the landing, depending on how far she deviated to the left would depend on how great that deduction would be. And dynamics is up to 3/10. What we look at for dynamics is how big, how fast, how huge, how wow was that vault. The athlete that barrels down the vault runway, explodes off the springboard, shows great repulsion and block off the table, has huge height and distance, is going to probably receive no deduction for dynamics. But you have the athlete that kind of gallops down the vault runway, jumps off the springboard, stops in handstand on the vault table, kind of falls off in that arch position like a tree, and then lands. That type of vault will have no dynamics and would probably receive up to 3/10 in deduction for dynamics. And we're going to see a vault in a minute to kind of show an example of a great dynamic vault. So let's look at this vault. This is a front handspring vault example to show dynamics. And it's a great example of no deduction for dynamics. Here she goes. Fast, faster, fastest, explodes, blocks, great height, distance, explosive. Okay? Little to no deduction on our dynamics for that vault. Now, the next thing we're going to look at are our 3 examples of our vault. And what I want you to do, based on what we've talked about today, see if you can kind of apply some of these deductions that you heard to see why this would be a weak vault. Look at the body positioning, look at any general body errors, look at too long in support, angle of repulsion, height, distance, dynamics. Now, what I do want to kind of preface with these weak vaults is that these are recreational athletes in a recreational class. The coach is spotting them. Do we see vaults like this? Occasionally, yes, we do. Are these probably the average type vaults we see? No. But this kind of gives you an idea of what a lot of these deductions look like and how they can be applied. So let's take a look at a few of these first and see what you think. Okay, look at their body positions, pikes and arch, bent knees, flexed feet. Okay, again, this is the extreme of a weak vault, but it gives you some idea of what's going on and what we're looking for and looking at, especially since they're going in slow motion. It'll really help you see what we see when an athlete is really vaulting at full speed. All right, let's move on and look at an average vault. So this is the type of vault that we see more of in competition. And the vault that I really want you to pay attention to, she's going to do 2. The first one is a little bit hard to see. The second one is a better vault. And again, think of what you just saw and see if you see any similarities or if you see any improvement, okay? Here goes Kira. Again, see, look for the body positioning on all 3 phases. Look for those common errors of knee separation, flexed feet, knee bend, too long in support, angle of repulsion, height, distance dynamics. All right, that's her first vault. Now let's take a look at her second vault. And this one will actually be easier to see. And here she goes. Okay, not bad, because again, this is kind of the average vault that we see. Do we see better sometimes? Yes. Do we see weaker sometimes? Yes. But I think this is a kind of a good example of an average vault. Now we're going to take a look at a strong vault. And when a judge goes into an event, they're judging beam, bars, floor, or vault, depending on what they're judging and depending on the level, they already have in their mind what the perfect level 4 bar routine would look like, what the perfect glide kip would look like, the perfect long hand kip would look like. So we have that in our head. So when we now go to evaluate any of these skills or routines or events, we have what it should look like in our head. So then we can start applying the deductions to what we actually see. How close to perfect was what we just saw to the perfect routine? So let's look at this vault, which is pretty darn perfect. And this is kind of what a judge would expect to see from a front handspring vault. And from that expectation, we then evaluate all others based on that expectation, okay? Very little body error, immediate block off the table, no angle deduction. Let's watch that one more time. Probably a little bit more distance would have been nice. Height was nice. Score well deserved. And here it is again in slow motion. So we are given a lot of deductions that we can apply to any and every event that we have. And as judges, we do our best to try to apply all the deductions as possible. Not because we want to ding the kids and give them the lowest score possible, but we want to best benefit the kids and have those coaches go, okay, why did they score the score they did? Well, they had flex feet, they had an arched body, they had a piked body, all right? So then you can go back as a coach and fix those things to then improve the score. Now, I will tell you, with the amount of deductions that we're given, it is impossible to try to apply every single one every single time to every routine or skill that we see. We do our best. But believe me when I tell you, as a judge, we want to give the best benefit of the doubt to the athlete that'll best give them the score that they deserve, all right? So let's get on to start values. Start values is what for vault, the one skill they do, which is the front handspring at level 4 and 5, is valued at a 10.0. Again, at level 6 and 7, they're not doing the front handspring vault anymore. They're doing the front handspring timer, suit timer, or Yurchenko timer. Those are valued at a 10 too, but they're not actually doing the full front handspring vault. And we don't see that again if the level 8, 9, or 10 chooses to do that vault. We don't see it again generally. If a level 8 chooses to do the front handspring vault, it does drop to a 9.0. At level 9, it drops to an 8.6. And then at level 10, the vault starts at an 8.2. And you may be asking, well, why? Why does that happen? There's a lot of different reasons that it can be done this way. Probably USA Gymnastics has done this okay, let me start that all over again. The reason why USA Gymnastics probably devalues the front handspring vault is because it is a compulsory low-level beginning level skill or for this event. And once you hit level 8, they want to see, and level 9 and level 10, they want to see more level specific skills. So when you're heading into level 8, they want to see more of the Suks, more of the Yurchenkos. Level 9 and 10, they're expecting to see those, now adding some twists into that. So they want the athletes to get away from performing the easier, lower level vault. So what they do is they devalue it. Because if you're a level 10 and you're performing a front handspring vault that's valued at a 10, and as a level 10, if you're performing a front handspring vault, it should probably be near perfect. You're going to be seeing 10s, 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 9s, 10s for a simple basic vault. And they don't want that. They want to see the harder level skills at the higher levels. So they devalue some of the lower level skills. And that's where our start values come from. All right, so we are done. I'm going to hold off for a second. If you have any questions about the presentation, go ahead and start typing those now into the comments section. I'll be more than happy to answer as many questions as I can. Try to remember, let me try to think while I'm waiting to see if anybody has any questions. If I can remember some of the questions from the other night. There was a question about Excel, even though this was a JO presentation, levels 1 through 10, there was some Excel questions. And I believe the question was, at Excel Gold, what is the value of the front handspring? And the answer to that was a level 10. I did have a question of what was the start value for a front handspring vault at level 6 and 7, which kind of surprised me because they must have been apparent. Because as a coach or an athlete, you would know at level 6 and 7, you can't perform the front handspring vault that you're only allowed to do one of those 3 timers, the front handspring timer, Yurchenko timer, or Soup timer. And then I don't believe we had any other questions that were really relevant to anything. And I don't see any questions coming up through the comment feed. So what I'm going to do then is I'm going to say, thank you so much for coming on tonight and watching my presentation. I really, truly appreciate it. I hope that in some way informed, that it educated you on how judges evaluate a front handspring vault, especially if you are a coach, because you can then go back to your gym and with your athletes and apply what you've learned today and apply that to your coaching. I know for me, when I started judging as a coach, it helped me immensely become a better coach because now I knew exactly what the judges were looking for, and I was then able to apply that to my coaching with my athletes. So I hope you guys had a great time. If you have any questions that come up after we've left the presentation, I will keep checking to make sure I answer them in the comment section, or you can email me at gymblogcentral@hotmail.com. And if you have any other presentation ideas, article ideas, you want to learn more about something, feel free to reach out and send me those thoughts and ideas, and I'll be more than happy to look them over. And if it's something I think I can do for you, I'll be more than happy to do it. You guys have an amazing night. If anybody's going to a competition this weekend, much success, be safe, and have an amazing night. All right, everyone, good luck, and thank you so much.